So many people sought validation within the established patriarchal systems, getting high academic degrees, climbing the corporate ladder, securing significant financial independence. And they found that the success they earned just felt sterile, profoundly unsatisfying.
Or even destructive, physically and emotionally destructive.
Right.
That gnawing sensation of emptiness is precisely the core challenge we're addressing.
Yeah.
You achieve the PhD, you get the title, you have the corner office, the art show, whatever the achievement is. But you look around and you just feel this acute sense of betrayal.
Betrayal by what, though? By the promise.
By the promise, exactly. The sources describe it as this deep dissatisfaction, because the model you followed demanded the suppression or even the outright sacrifice of your authentic self. Things like your body wisdom, your intuition, your need for community connection. All of that gets sidelined in service of external production.
That concept that success came at the price of the soul, that's incredibly powerful. And it shifts the entire focus of the quest, doesn't it? It's not an external battle anymore. It becomes an internal recovery.
It has to. So our mission today is to follow this very specific map for wholeness. It's an inner journey toward fully embracing that feminine nature that was previously rejected, healing these deep internal wounds, and then ultimately achieving a dynamic balance.
A balance between the inner masculine and the inner feminine principles.
Exactly. And to guide us, we have a clear 9-stage cyclical map.
And cyclical is the key word here, right? It's not linear. You don't just do it once and you're done.
Not at all. You might revisit stages as new challenges come up. It starts with the initial, often very painful, but necessary steps. Stage 1, separation from the feminine.
Okay.
Sweeps right into stage 2, identification with the masculine, and stage 3, the road of trials, where all that external success is achieved.
But it's the failure of that success that then drives the whole second half of the journey.
Precisely. That leads to stage 4, the illusory boon of success, which then precipitates the crucial stage, stage 5, the awakening to spiritual aridity and the descent to the goddess.
And that second half of the cycle, the redemptive part of the journey, it sounds like it's focused entirely on internal healing.
It is. After the descent, she begins stage 6, the urgent yearning to reconnect with the feminine. That leads to the vital work of stage 7, healing the mother-daughter split, and stage 8, healing the wounded masculine.
And the final stage.
Finally, she reaches stage 9, integration of masculine and feminine.
Yeah.
And that allows her to restart the cycle, but on a higher level of awareness, carrying that wholeness back out into the world.
That roadmap is our scaffolding. So let's jump right in. Let's go to that necessary but often really painful starting point. Stage 1, separation from the feminine. And this usually involves confronting what the sources call the mother wound. Why does the journey begin with a rejection of the self? It seems so counterintuitive.
It does, doesn't it? Especially for a journey that's focused on the feminine. But that initial rejection is it's often a survival mechanism.
A survival mechanism.
Yeah. We live in what's called an androcentric society, a world that is measured and valued primarily through a male lens. So because the feminine is culturally defined as inferior or passive or unfocused or dependent, when women measure themselves against male standards of competence and power, they automatically look deficient.
So if the culture values, say, quantifiable achievement, a linear career climb, and overt power,
right,
then qualities like emotional intelligence or intuition or relationship building are automatically just pushed to the side. They're secondary.
They're devalued, often dismissed as just soft skills. So the initial drive for many individuals, particularly those raised as what you call daughters of the father, is this urgent need to dispel the myth of female inferiority.
They have to prove themselves.
They have to prove themselves in the male-oriented world, in STEM, in law, finance, competitive academia, specifically to prove their intellectual capability, their emotional resilience, their financial independence. Everything is geared toward prestige, because prestige is the currency of that world.
And this rejection focuses so intensely and often, really unfairly on the mother. Why has the mother become the archetype and the scapegoat for all of this perceived inferiority?
Because the mother stands for the victim in ourselves, the unfree woman, the martyr. For a daughter who's ambitious and driven, there is this terrifying sense that her identity might just blur with her mother's, and she sees that identity as trapped or powerless.
So she has to get away.
She has to. And to ensure she doesn't inherit that same fate, she performs what the sources describe as radical surgery to desperately differentiate herself. She is, in essence, cutting away a part of herself that she sees as weak or dangerous to her survival in the external world.
And that separation is often fueled not just by fear, but by a really deep-seated rage, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
Rage at the previous generation of women for having accepted too readily and passively whatever comes. The daughter just refuses to become that powerless martyr.
And that refusal is the energetic thrust. It's what launches her out of the home and into this quest for external achievement.
The sources have a really clear, kind of poignant example of this drive and the contradiction in it with the story of Mary Lynn.
Yes, Mary Lynn. In her late teens, she chose to study high-level math. And not because she was passionate about it. I mean, her SAT scores were low. Her counselor even advised caution.
So why math?
Because it was a bastion of male authority and precision. She deliberately couldn't stand analyzing plots and characters, so she was actively rejecting what she saw as traditionally soft or feminine pursuits, like literature or the humanities.
It was a conscious rejection, a very clear statement she was making, designed to impress a specific audience.
Precisely. She wanted to show her father that she was as good as the son he had always wanted and never had.
Wow.
Her deep subconscious and, really rather simplistic fear was, if I fail in this quantifiable, masculine-defined world of math, I'll be relegated back to what I fear most.
She would end up like a girl.
She would end up like a girl. That fear is the central, internalized message of a patriarchal society.
I think we need to slow down on the consequences of this split because it seems like it sets up the failure that happens later in the journey. When the heroine rejects the negative feminine, the perceived weakness of her mother, she simultaneously denies her own positive feminine qualities.
That's the critical point.
Her playful nature, her intuition, creativity, her connection to her own body, all of it gets thrown out.
That's it. Mary Lynn closed off huge areas of herself. She established this internal rule that anything worthwhile had to be difficult, concrete, and quantifiable. And that creates a spiritual and emotional aridity right from the very start.
And it doesn't just stay psychological, does it? The sources say this denial physically manifests later on.
It does. The repression of her anger prevents her from even seeing the inequities of the male-defined system she's trying so hard to succeed in. She can't challenge the system because she's trying to become the best within it.
And the most damaging consequence, which really ties into the later stages of the journey, is the denial of her body wisdom, her intuition, her physical limits.
Yes.
This inhibits her spiritual development, forcing her to pursue the, quote, safer activities of the mind, because the mind, being rational and linear, is valued, while the body, being cyclical and intuitive, is dismissed.
We see this so acutely in the story of Sarah, the PhD candidate in anthropology. She developed this recurring, disabling pain in her side that just confounded her doctors.
And they couldn't find a physical cause.
No. But through therapeutic imagery, she realized that she had systematically denied the part of her that loved physical activity, loved hiking, loved children. She had built herself into this incredibly strong intellectual woman, but had no knowledge or recollection of how to nurture myself.
Because that's seen as weakness.
Exactly. Because women are culturally viewed as manipulative or wimpy if they acknowledge physical limitations. They're not seen as tough enough for the corporate sphere. They just learn to override the pain. Sarah's body eventually just forced the issue. It created severe internal damage to make her stop striving.
So stage one is this heroic move of trying to escape your own gender, which immediately creates this profound existential identity crisis. Even if she achieves temporary success down the line, the separation is sort of the first necessary tragedy.
A necessary tragedy, that's a good way to put it. So with that separation enacted, the heroine just throws herself into stage two, identification with the masculine, and stage three, the road of trials. This is the father quest. She seeks her identity as the daughter of the father, prioritizing all those cultural masculine values, prestige, authority, money.
But this stage isn't inherently negative, though, is it? I mean, it seems crucial for building the ego and just developing competence in the world.
Oh, absolutely not. When this process goes well, it's incredibly transformative. Daughters who are accepted and celebrated by their fathers gain immense confidence. And, critically, they develop this robust inner ally, the positive inner masculine figure, which the sources call the man with heart.
The man with heart.
Yeah, he's described as caring, warm, and strong. He supports her creative efforts and her ambition in a non-judgmental way. He's that internal champion who says, go forth and build, without attaching a bunch of strings.
We saw that kind of strength in Dianne Feinstein. Her father instilled in her this strong commitment to public service and really high expectations. And that support created immense staying power.
And on the external level, you see male allies and mentors Teachers, managers, they validate her intellect and purpose, and they help her climb that corporate or academic ladder that the culture values.
But this positive support contrasts so sharply with the enormous danger of seeking your definition solely through men.
Yes, the sources issue a very grave warning here, that it can be extremely damaging if a woman believes that she does not exist except in the mirror of male attention or male definition.
I want to dig into that specific analogy. This is where the Alice in Wonderland comparison comes in, right? Tweedledum and Tweedledee tell Alice she's only a figure in the Red King's dream. If the king wakes up, she'll go out, bang, just like a candle.
That analogy just perfectly illustrates the peril. If your self-worth is tied exclusively to external patriarchal validation, you lose your internal reality. You're constantly on edge, worrying that if the job ends or if the man leaves or if the praise stops, you will simply cease to exist.
It's a state of perpetual psychological dependency, but it's masked by external success.
Exactly. And when the father or the mentor is negligent or absent or disapproving, the dark side of this identification becomes a driving force, the creation of the armored Amazon. She's forced to overcompensate.
And that's when the inner masculine transforms.
It transforms into a greedy tyrant. This figure, which is internalized from a disapproving culture or father, demands more, better, faster. It drives her relentlessly toward perfectionism and achievement, regardless of the personal costs.
She becomes completely cut off from her softer side, her need for rest, her capacity for healthy, interdependent relationships. She can only operate in command mode.
Yes. And the detailed, complex example of Danielle, the high-powered real estate executive, is chilling because it shows the full psychological cost of this. She idolized her controlling father, who praised her intelligence.
But then told her business was not for girls.
How's the betrayal? And after his death, her entire inner life was still controlled by his impossible standards and his negative view of women. She internalized his greed and his control.
And that manifested externally.
Her rudeness, her aggression, her distrust of men, which led her to lose major business accounts, were all manifestations of that tyrannical inner masculine driving her.
And her body reflected this internal split too, the recurring genital infections. The sources say they symbolized how cut off she was from her soft, fertile, feminine core.
She was serving as a glorified handservant to her father's ego, striving to prove him wrong, yet she was crippled by his betrayal. She even recognized that she had to become heroic at a very early age to combat my mother. But her quest for freedom ironically trapped her in service to this destructive inner pattern.
So the essential psychological problem here is this double bind. She's striving for her father figure's approval, only to internalize his message that her achievement is fundamentally inconsistent with her feminine identity.
Exactly. And this conflict pushes her into stage 3, the road of trials, where she seeks all those external markers of success degrees, titles, financial security.
But even after all this internal struggle, the heroine still confronts external resistance. The sources describe this insidious societal dragon.
The societal dragon is maybe the most challenging because it doesn't look like a fire-breathing monster. It smiles and says, yes, dear, you can do anything you want to do.
While sabotaging her.
While simultaneously sabotaging her progress with low salaries, few opportunities, inadequate childcare, and glacially slow promotions. It's systemic suppression masked by progressive language.
And the current data really confirms the persistence of this dragon. The numbers are still pretty stark.
They are. Even with decades of focus on equality, women still hold. What is it?
Only 18.3% of Congress seats, despite being 51% of the population. In the Fortune 500, it's only 14.3% of corporate officers and 16.6% of board directors are women.
And this is the really frustrating one. Women's share of computing jobs has actually fallen to 27% since the 1970s.
So the glass ceiling is real, it's quantifiable, and it's actively preventing full integration.
Yeah. The sources point out that women's voices are structurally excluded from decision-making, even though economic and political issues have massive implications for families and communities.
However, the political sphere has given us some glimpses of an alternative model, which I think is essential to mention before we move on.
Absolutely.
I found the anecdote about the federal government shutdown resolution particularly resonant. It was primarily resolved by a group of women senators, Republican Susan Collins, Democrat Barbara Mikulski, and Republican Lisa Murkowski.
They came together and found a way forward when the traditional hierarchical model had completely failed.
It was an act of collaboration over dominance.
It was. They worked together by finding common ground out of respect for one another, relying on those traditionally feminine skills of relationship building and focused communication.
And Senator John McCain, a man known for his own brand of rugged heroism, openly praised them. He suggested, imagine what they could do if there were 50 of them.
And that legislative collaboration, it's based on arrows on connection and relationship. And it exemplifies the positive integration we're aiming for. And it stands in such stark contrast to the I can do it alone armor of the Amazon.
So the heroine has now conquered the external dragons. She's achieved the degrees and the titles. Which brings us to the moment of reckoning. Stage 4, the illusory boon of success. She has the money, the title, the authority, but she quickly finds out that the treasure is fool's gold.
This is the critical turning point. The success came at great sacrifice to her soul. She's exhausted, she's stressed, she's often dealing with stress-related ailments that were conveniently left out of the picture of the view from the top.
And the external rewards just stop mattering.
They stop mattering. And this profound, agonizing question emerges. What is all of this for?
This is the superwoman trap, isn't it? Measuring your self-worth solely against the highest male standards of production, and that model just demands overextension and eventually burnout. I want to spend a bit more time on Peg, the successful architect in her mid-40s. She has the career, supportive husband, but she feels like she is never enough.
Her realization is key to understanding this trap. She asks, I don't have a wife.
She wasn't being literal, of course.
No, she was referring to the support system her own successful father took for granted. The nurturing, the emotional and physical care that allowed him to focus exclusively on his external goals.
She realized that to maintain both a high-flying career and a family, she essentially had to be two people at once. And that level of output is it's not sustainable.
It isn't. She was yearning for that relationship to the feminine that she had sacrificed. But because she couldn't name the spiritual loss, she tried to fill the pain with more activity.
Which leads to the great pretender phenomenon. This obsessive need to stay busy, driven by a constant, almost addictive adrenaline rush that masks the growing sense of loss and emptiness.
This busyness is a crucial delaying tactic. It keeps her from confronting that internalized, tyrannical father image that's still demanding continued production. Joyce, the successful English professor, illustrates this perfectly.
She was resistant to any new commitment, just chronically exhausted, despite a celebrated academic career.
And she realized her identity wasn't actually her own. It was based on playing roles for other people.
What kinds of roles?
Being the great listener of my father, the great understander of my mother, the great caretaker of my brother and sisters. She acted strong and independent, but she was fundamentally dependent on those roles for her identity. Her inner life was still being dictated by her father, who had become this destructive inner male commanding more, better, faster, completely ignoring her real needs for rest and self-care.
So the resulting dynamic is this perpetual feeling of the myth of never being enough. You achieve one goal, and that tyrannical inner masculine immediately dismisses it and demands the next one.
Exactly. When that unconscious, unhealed masculine principle takes over her psyche, she can never feel satisfied. Whatever she accomplishes in the present moment is instantly devalued because she's always being urged to think ahead, to strive harder.
That internal voice just assaults her. You're right, I should be doing something more. This is not enough.
It's relentless. And the only solution here, which the sources suggest, is to practice the simple but very difficult art of satisfaction. You complete a task, you consciously say, I am satisfied, and you declare, and that's enough.
But saying that's enough requires a kind of spiritual courage. And when she fails to do that, the illusory boon dissolves into stage 5, the awakening to spiritual aridity and the descent. This feeling of being completely out of sync leads to a required physical or spiritual breakdown. She realizes, I've achieved everything I've set out to achieve, and I feel empty. Why this sense of betrayal? What have I lost?
And the symptoms are often severe because the body has been ignored for so long. Chronic insomnia, stomach issues, unscheduled bleeding.
The image of being bled dry.
It's a powerful metaphor, isn't it? It's a loss of vital energy, of creativity, of connection, a loss of fertility, not just in the literal sense, but in the sense of creative life force. The nurse in the sources who recognized this feeling noted that she missed the female network of shared childcare and shared frustrations. She missed the supportive arrows of community. She was yearning for a sense of home within their own bodies and community.
And this profound aridity necessitates voluntary isolation, the shift from doing to being. But the outer world sees this stasis as depression, right? As a failure.
Completely. But the sources are so clear. This descent is a sacred journey. It's a mindful initiation that has to be honored.
Like the CEO who quit her high-stress, six-figure salary job.
Yes, only to spend a month just immobilized in her bedroom. And she eventually began to heal by starting to garden. She was literally moving down into the earth and the cyclical rhythm of nature rather than striving up and out into the competitive atmosphere of the corporate world.
And during this descent, she has to remove herself from the male realm, the realm of external validation and production, to focus exclusively on her body, emotions, intuition, and inner images.
Which is terrifying. And it's in this descent that she meets the dark goddess. This is the truly non-glamorous part of the journey.
So who is the dark goddess, and why must she be confronted?
She is the shadow aspect of the feminine. She is the raw, primal power, the rage, the greed, the fear of loss that was systematically suppressed by patriarchal religions and forced underground. I think of Ereshkigal, the Sumerian queen of the Great Below, or the Hindu goddess Kali, the destroyer.
And confronting her is essential. Why?
Because she holds the keys to the heroine's own suppressed power.
The myth of Inanna illustrates this confrontation perfectly. Inanna descends, and at the bottom she's stripped bare and impaled on a peg by Ereshkigal.
This is the symbolic death. It symbolizes the necessity of utter destruction and pain to achieve her own wholeness. It's a force that is impersonal, like decay and gestation, but it's utterly transformative. This painful confrontation with Ereshkigal, her own deepest, most feared, and most powerful self, is what allows the heroine to establish her own internal sovereignty.
She's forced to become a whole entity, not merely dependent on man or child.
Exactly. And crucially, after this descent, she gains the capacity to assert herself and to say no without fear of being labeled a bitch, which is the label previously used to silence assertive feminine power.
So the journey to Ereshkigal means confronting decades of unexpressed fury, the rage she had originally aimed at her mother, which is now internalized.
Yes, the sources mention the woman who dreams of her inner dark mother as this reclining, sick figure who holds power through her dependency. The negative mother complex, the martyr, demands attendance and sacrifice.
So the heroine realizes she's trapped on a subway car of endless service.
Right. And the only way off is to physically get up and walk away, to abandon that old, long-suffering identity that serves the negative mother complex. The descent is the path to sovereignty, because you stop defining yourself through external praise or blame.
So the destruction is complete, the heroine is at her lowest point. But that darkness leads inevitably to stage 6, urgent yearning, and stage 7, reclaiming the body. After the dryness of spiritual aridity, she starts to yearn for the moist, green, juicy, creative feminine, like Ocean, the Yoruba goddess of sweet water, or the Native American changing woman.
This is the return of Eros. And the healing begins by addressing the body-spirit split, which is a cultural split that began historically with the overthrow of the mother goddess cults. We just forgot that we're interconnected with nature.
The sources remind us that historically a woman's body was considered awesome.
The blood retained during pregnancy to make a baby. The blood retained after menopause to make wisdom. Women are now reclaiming this profound wisdom, learning to know with their bodies. This is the complete antithesis of the intellectual Sarah, who denied all her physical needs.
So the focus shifts dramatically from production, from doing, to inner work and refinement, which is being. For the heroine who has spent her entire life striving, this has to be terrifying.
It is deeply challenging because the daughters of the father have this intense fear of allowing things to happen naturally. It creates enormous anxiety around waiting or trusting. They're used to forcing processes.
So trusting the mystery of manifestation, the idea that you prepare the ground and allow the harvest to come rather than pulling on the shoots,
becomes a deep teaching of the feminine journey.
How is the concept of being defined here? It sounds so passive, but the sources seem to imply it requires enormous effort and awareness.
It requires focused awareness and courage to question production for production's sake. It's about refining the vessel, our physical in our psychic life. The vessel, the feminine principle, is not passive, it's transformational. It's the container for creation.
So you shift from constantly building external structures to meticulously maintaining the internal container.
Exactly. The quality of the vessel, its capacity for stillness, acceptance, and intuition, that determines what kind of transformation can occur within it.
And this refining of the vessel leads directly into stage 8, healing the mother-daughter split. The goal here is unwinding the shroud of blame, moving beyond resentment and restoring authenticity. We are moving past the radical surgery of stage 1.
This is a major payoff stage. The heroine has to achieve a reconciliation that accepts her mother as she is, moving beyond the pain of being the daughter unmothered or the daughter who inherited a pattern of powerlessness.
Because if she continues to resent her mother's shortcomings,
she remains bound as a perennial daughter in waiting. She's emotionally stuck in a state of childhood dependency.
The folklore example of Mesmeranda powerfully illustrates this necessary internal reconciliation.
Yes, Mesmeranda, the unloved youngest daughter, she achieves power and becomes the empress. And then, an old, poor, mad woman, who is her mother, whom she denied and left behind, shows up at the palace gate.
And what does she do?
Mesmeranda, in an act of sovereign compassion, has to open the gate, take back the madwoman, and cleanse and care for her. She recognizes her mother, not as the idealized figure she wished for, but as the flawed woman she is.
And this act frees Mesmeranda to reclaim her full feminine power.
By integrating the discarded, dependent, and messy feminine parts within herself, it's an act of self-acceptance via maternal acceptance.
And this healing is beautifully modeled by the universal feminine cycle found in the Demeter and Persephone myth.
That myth is essential because it models the reunification of the feminine aspects. Demeter, the grieving mother, Persephone, the initiated maiden, and Hecate, the crone embodying dark wisdom.
And the grief is a necessary part. Demeter's overwhelming grief stops the world, causes a famine.
Exactly. That grief, the recognition and the deep sorrow for the loss of the young, carefree, uninitiated self, is necessary for the transformation to occur. You have to mourn what you gave up in order to succeed.
The crucial step is Persephone's return. She swallows the pomegranate seed, which means there is no going back to the previous status quo of innocence. She's assimilated the experience of the depths.
She becomes the queen of the underworld. She's initiated into the sexual mysteries, into the full consciousness of her power. Breakdown becomes breakthrough, and she has found her daughter within the vital, creative, independent self.
And Hecate, the goddess of the dark moon and the crossroads,
Becomes her queenly comrade, symbolizing that the wisdom of the dark feminine, the part she met back in stage 5, is now a conscious guiding ally. This complete, reunified feminine constellation allows her to move forward, whole.
So, the feminine is restored and healed. But the journey isn't complete without stage 8, finding the inner man with heart, healing the wounded masculine. The heroine has worked so hard, following this external heroic path, that she has internalized a destructive, tyrannical masculine.
Right. And now she must release machismo, the I-can-do-it-alone warrior archetype that forced her into isolation in the first place.
She realizes she still desperately needs the masculine principle.
Of course. Jung defined the positive masculine as the ability to know one's goal and achieve it. It's necessary for structure and clarity. But she needs a positive inner masculine, the man with heart, who supports her with compassion, strength, and integrity. He allows her to rest her tired ego and prioritize her feminine wisdom. The tyrant has to be dethroned.
To understand the wounded masculine, we look to the core Western mythological wound, the Grail legend. The Fisher King, who represents the ruling principle in our culture and psyche, our collective leadership, has a wound that won't heal.
And the wound is not physical, it's spiritual. It's the alienation caused by prioritizing logos, the rational mind, structure, control over eros, the deep creative relational feminine principle.
Because the king is wounded, his kingdom, the culture, the world becomes the wasteland.
Yes, and the grail, the chalice, which is the symbol of the sacred feminine, is present. It's carried by the Grail Maiden, but it's completely unseen and ignored by the wounded king and his court.
And the healing depends entirely on Parsifal, representing innocent consciousness, asking the crucial question.
What ails thee?
Yes.
This requires acknowledging the pain of the alienation and the cost of the wasteland. If we refuse to recognize this alienation, we just inhabit that wasteland forever.
Let's make that complex analogy concrete. How does this wound translate to the modern world?
Well, the sources compare the wasteland directly to the ecological disaster of the Exxon Valdez oil spill. Massive destruction caused by human error, negligence, and a primary focus on production on logos over interconnectedness, over eros. And that destruction was met with denial and obfuscation by the unrelated masculine principle, the corporate structures that refuse to acknowledge their responsibility or the environmental cost.
So the wound is our collective spiritual aridity. It's Hildegard's concept, manifesting as ecological disaster because we prioritize profit over a life-giving moisture.
Precisely. And the solution is found in a beautiful sacred marriage story, Gawain and Lady Ragnall, where the healing occurs through partnership.
Lady Ragnall, who had been bewitched for asserting her sovereignty and sexuality, could only be freed if Gawain could answer a specific riddle. What do women desire above all else?
And the correct answer was sovereignty, the right to exercise her own will and make her own choices.
Gawain recognizes this absolute need for autonomy, and through this act of reverence, he heals the king and he frees Ragnall. Their union is a sacred marriage of equals, a model for the heroine's internal process.
In that moment, Gawain, the traditional hero, is initiated into the mysteries of the feminine. He learns that man is only a recipient and channel of a destiny flowing from a deep, mysterious ground of being. The healing occurs when the sovereignty of the feminine is recognized and revered, not subjugated or ignored.
This quest culminates in the ultimate stage, stage 9, integration and beyond duality. The Hieros Gumos, the sacred marriage of the ego and self, results in absolute wholeness.
It's the internal birth of the divine child. Or, as the story of Amor and Psyche concludes, the birth of a sacred daughter named Pleasure, Joy, Bliss.
This integration demands a fundamental shift in worldview, doesn't it? Moving from hierarchy, which is the pyramid structure, to partnership, which is the circle.
Yes, hierarchy inevitably creates a king and a subject, a ranked system. Partnership allows for interdependence without inferiority.
And Rian Eisler's research on old European Neolithic societies from, 7,000 to 3,500 BCE, it provides a real-world model for this possibility.
These cultures were equalitarian and metrolocal. Power was defined as being with-linking rather than over-ranking.
And crucially, their art and structures lacked weapons, heroes, or battle scenes.
None. Their focus was the goddess, symbolized by the chalice and the circle. The art showed no polarization between genders. Descent was traced through the mother, but neither gender ranked over the other. Diversity was not equated with inferiority or superiority. Their goal was partnership and collaboration.
The psychological shift required to achieve this level of integration is radical, embracing the concept of interbeing, famously taught by Thich Nhat Hanh.
Duality, which drive the heroine's journey in the first place, that split between masculine and feminine, mind and body, is recognized as an illusion. You cannot have right without left, good without evil, women without men.
Or paper without the cloud.
Right. If you look closely at the paper, the sun, the water, and the person who made it are all there.